to those, or what do you see as the most common challenge for transition and service members?
Well, there's a couple, but number one is really finding that purpose outside the military. So what's going to make you fulfilled afterwards? And that's a hard thing to find. Like, when you get back to the very human, basic level of why you are here on the planet, most of us don't think about that stuff a lot, but it's important to think about. It may not come from your job. It may come from volunteer activities, but, you should understand that as a human, what your why is. And then you ought to be able to talk about yourself, advocate for yourself versus just the team. And I get, it's important. So I'm not saying I'll make fun of my own community, not in a write a book or be on TV kind of way, but, in a respectful manner. You need to be able to advocate for yourself. And all of that helps you figure out, what it is you want to do, right? Yeah. So, figure out your why first, be able to talk about it articulately, and then that would kind of drive your what. Yeah, in the actual job.
Welcome to the Leading with Vulnerability podcast. I'm your host, Yuma Barnett, and today my guest is Matt Stevens. Now, Matt's the first SEAL that I've had on the show, so we're not going to hold that against him, Rangers out there that are listening, and the people that know Matt in the community. And Matt, along with being a former SEAL, is also the CEO of the Honor Foundation. And before I pass it over to Matt to introduce himself, I will say for those who are listening and who have listened, if you don't know, THF, the Honor Foundation, is the reason for this podcast. So when I went to THF and went through with their cohort, when I was transitioning out of service, and one of the first meetings we had in the virtual world on Zoom, the word vulnerability was thrown out. And you guys often hear me talk about it. That's when I had to go to Webster and see what the hell that meant. And that's when I found Brene Brown and all the stuff surrounding vulnerability. And it really changed my life, that word and the Honor Foundation. So it's an honor to have you on here, Matt. I can't wait to get in the conversation, and I'll pass it off to you to introduce yourself.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Yuma. And since I'm the first and only SEAL to be on your podcast, I think I have you outnumbered now. So,
yeah, that's right.
Pleasure to be here. Quick introduction, spent 26 years in the SEAL teams. I was an officer, retired in 2017. Along the way, I went through this thing called the Honor Foundation as well, just like you did. Hadn't thought about any of this stuff or myself really for 25 years at that point. Loved it, stayed involved, and had the great opportunity to join the team in 2019 as the CEO. So I've been doing this for about 4 years. Love helping other service members find their purpose, figure out their whys, and go succeed and have great lives.
Yeah. And we're going to definitely talk some more about THF and everything that you guys do, but let's get straight into the word at hand at vulnerability. And I just like to know, and the listeners always like to hear what my guest's definition of vulnerability is.
Yeah, for me, it's being honest with yourself and with others around you. It that life and leadership, and it's all messy, but being able to share those experiences and demonstrating to others that no one's perfect. So I think you'll learn the most when things don't go perfectly, and that's okay. And I think once you can demonstrate vulnerability, it comes a lot of trust. So you'll gain a lot of trust and credibility if you're willing to show vulnerability. And that's tough to do, especially as a leader. And it's a fact that, trusting others, which is the other side of it, makes you vulnerable. But you have to trust the folks around you, especially in our former line of work. You have to trust the people that work for you and the people you work for. Yeah. Otherwise, you'll be a micromanager, and no one likes that. So I think you have to be secure in who you are as a human to be truly vulnerable. So
yes,
that answers the question.
I agree, and that's the same sentiment I get from a lot of the people that give their definition of vulnerability, and I couldn't agree more. So before we talk about THF and what you're doing now, let's backtrack a little bit and talk about your career in the Navy. As a kid from New Mexico, water is a scarce thing. And I kind of wanted to join the Navy, and I wanted to do the SEAL thing. I had some family that was there, Pearl Harbor, that, twin brothers, one died on the USS Arizona. So there was a little connection there, but I wasn't much of a swimmer, and I'd never seen the ocean until I left New Mexico. And thank God, years later when I'm in Ranger selection, and they're pulling me off of the bottom of the pool for the first time because I didn't know how to swim, I'm glad I chose the Ranger route instead of the SEAL route. But what led you to the Navy, the Naval Academy, and ultimately the SEAL teams?
Yeah, so I grew up, parents split up when I was pretty young. Grew up in upstate New York until I was 10, then moved with my dad in Charlotte, North Carolina, and kind of finished up through high school there. My dad swam at Syracuse, made me go to swimming lessons, everything from guppy up through swordfish and sailfish, and I hated it. Absolutely hated the formal swimming part of it. But as I was going through high school, I thought I was going to be a professional baseball player, but I actually sucked at baseball. So no colleges came calling. Nobody was drafting me. And as I was trying to figure out what the next step in life was, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I just didn't want to be average. Most of my friends and colleagues, were not colleagues at that point, but everybody else was going to local universities, colleges, and I just really didn't have any desire to do that. But my uncle was a maintenance officer in a Navy fighter squadron, took me on one of those Tiger cruises where you get to go out for half a day and see launch and recovery of, F-14s at the time. I thought that was going to be pretty cool. Top Gun came out, when I was graduating high school, or right around there, 1986, 87. I graduated in 87. And so I wanted to go to the route of, joining the Navy. That looked pretty cool. Along the way, doing the medical stuff, I had they determined I had a Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome, which is a heart condition. So they're like, you're never going to fly. And I was like, well, can I still go to the Naval Academy? Because I started thinking about that. And I figured, well, if I can't fly, maybe I'll be a Navy SEAL. Because I saw, this when you used to get the Sunday paper and it was like 2 inches thick, there was this thing called Parade magazine.
Oh, yeah.
Little insert. Well, somewhere around 1986, 87, there was this one, and on the front of it had a picture of a dude covered in sand carrying a log on his head or something like that. And it was called The Toughest Men Alive. First time I'd ever heard about Navy SEALs. It was an article about them. I'm like, that's what I'm going to do. And so I just focused on that. And the more I learned about it, and this is pre-internet days, and so I had to actually read books and talk to other people, the more I liked it. I liked everything they stood for, being part of a small team, elite unit, doing things that most people don't think they can do. And that's what kind of drove me. And I focused on that for the entire 4 years I was at the Naval Academy, and got lucky enough to get a slot to get to BUDS, basic underwater demolition SEAL training, and somehow slipped through the cracks and passed. So that was kind of why and my path to doing it.
Yeah. So it's your time at the Naval Academy. What was your Naval Academy experience for anybody out there that's thinking about applying for the Naval Academy? Obviously, it's probably changed since the years you've been there, but as much as it changes, things stay the same. What would you tell somebody that was thinking about going to the Naval Academy or applying there?
I would say it's a great place to be from. I think all the service academies are great. The experience while you're there is it's not your typical college experience, but it's a lab of leadership, and they put students in charge of other students. You learn to be a follower. First year as a plebe, you have zero rights, and that kind of sucks. But you find like the military, you kind of find joy and fun in some of the things that suck. And then you kind of move into positions of leadership, inch by inch, foot by foot. And so you're studying the art of leadership from day one. And I would say I'm glad I did it. Wasn't always super happy to be there while I was there, but would absolutely recommend it. It's a great place to start. It's free to the person that goes, as far as money, but you owe them 5 years once you're done, and you come out of school debt free, and with the ability to work with some of the greatest humans on the planet. So, I mean, yeah. I always tell people, hey, no matter what you do in life, you probably ought to serve a cause other than yourself at some point. And so I would absolutely recommend it.
Yeah, and kind of this question along the same lines as the SEAL question, right? If somebody's out there thinking they want to go They want to go be a SEAL. I have the same thing when people reach out to me and ask about Ranger selection stuff. The biggest thing I tell them is don't self-select out. Don't quit, right? The day's going to end. The hell week's going to end, right? And you're going to get through it. But what I see is most people, they quit on themselves. They self-select out of those processes. And I just say, just don't quit and rely on a buddy. What do you tell somebody that's going to, that wants to go through the SEAL training, and how do you get through it?
That's a great question. I don't know how to get through it, but I would say the will to succeed. We always hear about that, but the will to prepare to succeed is even more important. So don't show up with any question in your mind that you're not going to make it through. Don't have a plan B. Make sure nowadays you can figure out almost every evolution that's going to be required. So train to those standards, train to crush the standards, because the standards, just the minimum standards, are not the real standards. And you're right. I think it is the whole process gives you easy ways out, whether it's trying to figure out the administrative part of getting in. A lot of people just say, screw it, I'm done, to showing up and getting injured or failing one thing. If you get rolled back, like you can do in BUD/S training once, for performance or failing something, then, don't quit. I've seen people stay out at BUD/S for a year after injuries, and they don't quit. And you know what? They're some of the best SEALs because they have that perseverance mindset where nothing's going to stop them. So, it's going to suck, but a lot of people have made it.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm sure you do. I talk to a lot of people that are thinking about joining service. They want to go the Ranger route, SF route, SEAL route. And a lot of them ask, and I have the answer for the Ranger route. I don't know about the SEAL route, and I hope you can answer it, is what happens if you don't make it? Where do you go then? Back to Big Navy, or how does that work if you don't make it through the selection process?
Yeah, it kind of depends on why you didn't make it. So if you ring the bell and you quit, you say, I don't want to be here, then you're going to Big Navy regardless. You may have fewer options if you do that, like go into something you want to do, because if you quit or you don't make it, you then serve it for the needs of the Navy. So you could be chip and paint on USS Never Sail. But a lot of times, if you just don't make it for whatever reason, it's not an ethical thing, you can come back in 2 years. And I've known people to come back 2 and 4 years later and try it 3 times and make it through. So it's not the end of the road, I would say, in most cases. If you're a shitbag and you steal something or lie, or there's a character flaw, you're probably not coming back.
Yeah. It's the same thing. I think it's the same in a lot of our community. Some of the best leaders I saw went through RASP twice before they got selected, and that's just what it took. But they didn't quit on themselves. They prepared better the next time, and they came back and crushed it. And it's good to hear that it's kind of the same way for that. So everybody, you see the movies, you read the books. Everybody has this perception of what a SEAL is and what they do. And I'll tell you, I was in the Philippines when I was with 2 Commando, the Australians, and there was a SEAL there, and it wasn't as sexy as it sometimes seems. He was out there by himself, embedded with the Filipinos, doing amphibious stuff. And he's like, it's a lot more broad job than people think, on the SEAL, especially, on the platoon side of the teams. So what is life like as a SEAL from your perspective?
Well, I look at it from a couple of different perspectives. Life as a single SEAL team guy, life as a married with no kids team guy, and then life as a married with kids team guy. And then you could even put a fourth kind of pillar in there of life as a married team guy with kids while at war, which is different, right? So it's busy. It's super busy. You're on the road a lot. Our hubs are Virginia Beach, Virginia, and San Diego. Because of encroachment, there's not a lot of training areas at Navy bases. And frankly, most of the stuff we do is similar to what Rangers and SF do, right? It's hard skills, shoot, move, and communicate. And so you have to travel to where the ranges are to be able to practice that at a individual unit and then kind of squadron and integration type thing. And that just doesn't happen around home port. So you work in these 2-year cycles, 6 months, say it starts at 6 months, allotted time to go to individual school, sniper school, breacher school, free fall, jump master, free fall school, all that stuff. Individual training. Then you get the unit level training where you're doing your core tasks of land warfare, CQB, CQC, amphibious stuff, diving, jumping. You have to hit all these mission essential tasks before you're ready to deploy. And then there's a shorter phase of squadron integration training where you bring all your capabilities, troops, platoons, squads, enablers together. You might not know all the enablers, and you have to actually know what you're doing together before you deploy. And then our model in the regular teams is you deploy for 6 months somewhere, and then you come back and you start it all over again. So you're gone a lot of times, and that can be awesome for young team guys. It was great for me. A little more difficult, different kind of perspective when you're married with no kids. And then once kids are thrown into the mix, I mean, that's kind of where it changed for me. But I didn't have my first kid till after 9/11. I was on my first deployment right after 9/11 when I got notified that my wife was pregnant. So, yeah. All in all, though, great experience. You work with some of the best humans on the planet. Brotherhood, deep bonds are formed, and it's not all great though. There's a lot of stuff that isn't fun.
Yes.
That goes along with it.
Yeah. And with that, I think one of the reasons I loved being in the Ranger Regiment is because although selection was over, I had to earn my job every day. Every day I stepped into the company area, I had to bring my best because there was always somebody behind me ready to take my job if I didn't show up 100% all the time. And the people that I kind of saw fall away was those who didn't bring that mindset after selection. They thought they made it. They thought they were the cool guy. They thought it was about the kit and the mission and not about the basics. Do you see some of the same stuff in the SEAL community?
Absolutely. Yeah. We have a similar saying, earn your trident every day.
Yep.
And frankly, the most motivating factor for me was always peer pressure, right? Officers and enlisted and the SEAL teams go through the same training. You're doing the same workup, and heckling is encouraged.
Yes.
And it's a way of life. So if you don't perform every single day, whether it's PT, shooting, core skills, the worst thing is being thought of less as a operator by your peers than anything else. And so there's a couple selection folks, I would say selection flaws that happen and the wrong people get through, but that's taken care of in pretty short order, most of the time.
Yeah, I agree. And I just want to know, so as a husband and a father, as busy as the military was for 20 years, especially our community, what were some of your keys to getting back time or being intentional about time with your kids? What was Matt the father? How did you try to achieve work-life balance? And though probably like me failed a lot of the time, but I nonetheless, I tried a lot. What were some of your things?
Yeah, I failed miserably, I would say, because again, I didn't have my first kid till 2002, February of 2002. And we were in the middle of things, and I deployed a lot like you did. So I can't say that I did anything well or right, but the first step is marrying a person that is independent and can deal with it. If you marry the wrong person, then throw kids into the mix, I think it's a recipe for failure. And my wife was a Virginia State trooper before, we actually got stationed down at JSOC, and she had to kind of put that on the shelf for a couple of years. So she had her own career, right? And I think marrying somebody that's independent, has their own life, and can deal with your absence is important. So that's one piece of it. Second piece, I would say, is just when you do have those rare moments, is present, and not. Like once I had kids, it wasn't about coming home from deployment and then going out and hanging with all the bros at a bar, because I was not at that phase of my life anymore. And just hanging out with the kids and taking a little load off my wife when I could. Being whether it's a weekend at home, which is way harder when you have small kids, and being a single dad for a weekend.
Yeah,
I mean, exhausting.
Yes,
but it's just the right thing to do in a relationship.
Yeah.
Partner.
Yeah, I agree. I was told, by a smart chaplain one time, one of the most important decisions you're going to make is who you decide to marry. And my wife, part of the family readiness group for years, that was always what she would preach to the other spouses is you got to have your own life. If you just base everything you do around the deployment cycle and the worry that comes along with that, you're going to drive yourself nuts, and it's going to permeate in through your relationship and your marriage. And I'm fortunate I married somebody that understood that and had her own life, and that's what made us last through those challenging years. So all that time in uniform, all those deployments and whatnot, what was your most challenging day in the uniform?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a lot of them along the way. So, little known fact about me is when I was a very young officer, my chain of command thought there was some great value in joint training, and so they sent a bunch of guys to Ranger School. I was sent to the Special Forces qualification course, so I had another 6-month course that I had to do. And along the way, I met a Canadian infantry officer. This was before they had any SOF in Canada. He was from the 3rd PP CLI, Princess Patricia, Canadian Light Infantry, right? And we became best friends, and he was my best friend for years to come. In 2006, I had just kind of come off the train of deployments and was going to school at Quantico to get my, whatever you call it, intermediate education for officers. And he was doing a UN peacekeeping mission in southern Lebanon when the, one of the uprisings between Hezbollah and Israel. And he was killed by a 2,000-pound JDAM that the Israelis dropped on him because Hezbollah people were basically using the UN compound and shooting from near it. And so that was probably one of the hardest days of my life is, getting notified that my best friend was killed in action effectively, but, doing a UN peacekeeping mission.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Pretty horrible day. And then the other worst one for me is taking action that affects other people's careers and lives. It usually revolves around firing people, taking away their SEAL trident. They made a huge mistake, or sending them away from a particular unit that they were no longer welcome at.
Yeah, that's rough. And when you speak about, losing your friend from another, army, basically, I think the relationships that you can build in the military, in the SOF community are some of the, it's hard to explain when you go through some of the things that we've gone through together, selection, combat, those relationships, they extend U.S. Army, they extend U.S. Navy, and they, go all the way to the other countries. I have some of the best friends I have are Australian commandos, and I only spent 2 years there, so that's one of the things you get when you join the service. And with that, there's obviously some great days in uniform. What's the day you look back on fondly or get a chuckle about or something, you call one of your better days or your best day in uniform?
Yeah, so conversely to firing people, it always brings great joy, or did, when like the unit, coming home from deployment after a good one where nobody got hurt, where people were saying nice things because, we trade in the stock of reputation, and that was super important to me. So, crushing it on deployment, coming back, everybody's high-fiving, like, always love that. And then the second thing is just, when somebody that worked for me or with me got promoted or, kind of elevated to a level above where I was, mentoring them, and then seeing that come to fruition is like that's super gratifying to me. So those are the two things that stick out on my mind. Certainly doing some of the operations that we did. And I was, when I was a squadron commander, aligned with 275. And so we always deployed together. I was on a deployment where the lone survivor thing happened, and it was this joint strike force concept that General McChrystal forced on. Nobody wanted to do it. For me, that operation forged deep respect for the different units, and kind of like that's where I think I had an epiphany. It's like, okay, all this sophomoric competition needs to go away because these guys are badasses. We're all the same.
Yep.
We're just, chose a slightly different path.
Yep. I agree wholeheartedly. We've obviously, those first couple of years when they started teaming us together were awkward, I would say at times, uncomfortable sometimes, especially from a leadership position. But I did 3 trips with the same team. And I built some really good relationships, and we would never see each other, and then we'd run across each other in Germany or something, and I'd recognize the team members, and we'd always say what's up and talk about that trip to Al Asad or Kandahar. So we are all the same. I think it's the same when people say, what's it like at 1st Ranger Battalion compared to 2nd? And I'm like, they're the same thing. It's the same thing. It's the same people. It's just a different location. So I think we're all kind of cut from the same cloth. We just chose different, we were just made into different garments. That's all it really is. So eventually you transitioned out of service. What rank? 06?
Yeah, I was in 06.
So there's still some room in front of you to go if you wanted to. So why did you ultimately hang up the uniform?
Yeah, so I was at a point where I was in a group command, right? So equivalent to an SF group, same rank or regiment, and everything after that to me didn't look appealing. And my philosophy the entire time I was in was like, yeah, I may make a career of this, but I'm going to keep doing it till I quit having fun and don't enjoy the job. I almost got out about 5 years prior to that. I got stationed in the Pentagon, and it wasn't my thing. Some people love the Pentagon, but I saw wild inefficiencies and it just wasn't my thing. So, coming out of group command, it was like, okay, in order to compete for an officer, the next job has to be even harder, and you have to go bust your ass. And I had 2 kids in high school at the time, and the life for me after that also would have been moving every year or 2, or being a geographic bachelor. I did the GeoBatch thing one time. I didn't think it was great for me or my family, and so I chose my family. That was it. And so I felt fulfilled with it, with my career and the things that I was able to do. I mean, is everything. And, a good chunk of it just happened to be post 9/11. And so I chose my family, and I wanted stability for the kids as they were going through high school. Because I think when you're pulling them out and moving in high school, that makes it tougher for them to succeed, whether it's sports, academics, kind of integrating into new things. I mean, they're super resilient. We did move around, and we moved overseas up to middle school, but then I wanted that stability for high school.
Yeah, I think most people can relate to it, especially, I don't know if some people probably don't understand in the military. It's not like you just do another year. It's if you commit to another command, or, you might be committed to another 4 to 6 years of your life. And like you said, toward the end of my career, I knew, unless a lot of cards fell the right way, it was every 2 years I was going to be on the move again during the prime years of my life and my kids' life. So I decided to hang it up. And I think a lot of service members do the same thing. I refer to our community, the SOF community, and there's plenty of other infantry just grunts out there that are the same, but we're kind of meat eaters, right? We're meat eaters, we're go-getters. And transition, I think, for the meat eater is a little bit more difficult because it's harder for us to blend in to the next, to the civilian side of life. And that leads us to your transition and the Honor Foundation. So what was your experience with the Honor Foundation? I guess probably at its infancy, probably was when you started to go through it. What was your, how did you transition?
Yeah. So I would say once you make the decision, it's kind of like a weight off your shoulders. At least it was for me, because I didn't look back. I was ready. And it was all about looking forward. And so I was lucky enough to have, a lot of us are banged up. So I had to have a couple surgeries, and I was lucky enough to get some time after my command to get the surgeries, recover, then transition, versus trying to do that while in command. And so that was good. And just having time and space to decompress a little bit. I went to the Honor Foundation in the very first Virginia Beach cohort, because this whole thing started in San Diego. I went through in early 2016. I was still had about a year to go. And it was a time commitment for sure, but it was I just went in with a mindset of I'm going to learn as much as I can because I hadn't thought about any of this stuff. I figured it was going to be more about resumes and, how to do interviews and things like that. And the experience was eye-opening because we don't start with that stuff. We start with make yourself vulnerable. Let's talk about you as a human. What's going to make you tick in the next chapter? What's your why? What's your purpose on the planet? All this kind of stuff that, like, when you're in the grind, you just don't even think about it. You're just like, I'm going to go and be the best SEAL I can be or the best ranger. And so it was like, okay, I have no idea what any of this looks like. I don't know what I want to do. I just, I know what I don't want to do. And so it was just good to have time to reflect, go through some exercises that were led by incredible faculty, and then get connected to a network that was there for no other reason than to help me. And that's the thing about transition. It's not a time and space like the day you retire. It is a process that will take it should start a year before you get out, and it'll probably take another year or two or whatever when you're done. So it was good. It was eye-opening. It was game-changing for me to go through the Honor Foundation program, and that's why I stayed involved. So, like most soft guys, I gave honest and open feedback to the faculty, and one of the things that I saw was like their board had no soft guys on it except a Vietnam era SEAL who was awesome, but it's like that's not current. So your board probably ought to be, a couple of dudes, and the founder, Joe Musselman, asked me to stand up a SOF advisory board. So I just went and tried to find some pipe hitters from every service that would give them honest and open feedback and keep them informed of what the ground truth was with the force. So that's how I kind of stayed involved. Then I became a board member later. Then I realized that board members have to raise money, and
Yeah.
in the whole nonprofit life, it's like, oh, okay, I got to go raise money. Sure thing. And that's I guess a good start point.
Yeah. So the Honor Foundation, we'll dig into it a little deeper. So, I used some other transition foundations before going to the Honor Foundation. And when I got to the Honor Foundation, I was like, this is different. And it was different because you held me accountable. It was, if you don't show up to class for, the certain amount of time, you're not going to graduate. If you don't do the work, you're not going to graduate. If you don't participate, you're not going to graduate. And, immediately, like all things meat eater wise, I pushed back on that. I was like, who are these people to tell me, and then then we went through the first couple seminars, and I realized that there was something there, and being held accountable is what made me successful as a ranger. And they were just doing something that I already inherently had inside of me, and I loved it once I gave in to the process. And trust me, we had some backdoor conversations with some other members that were like, "I can't do this. This is ridiculous." But once you give into the process, I promise Honor Foundation will change your life. You just have to give into it. So, can you speak a little bit about that process and what the Honor Foundation is all about?
Yeah, I would love to. So the Honor Foundation was formed to fill the gap of transition assistance because DOD offers you the 1 week or 2 week or whatever 3-day TAP transition assistance program. In the Army, it's Soldier for Life. I think in the Navy, it's TGPS. They're all equally marginal across the board.
Yes.
And so that was, yeah. And you already alluded to some of the reasons why it's different for members of the SOF community. It's just, your identity is tied to being a SEAL, a Green Beret, a Ranger. And so that's why it's 3 months long. It's designed like an executive MBA program where you should do it 12 to 18 months before you get out. So you come to class twice a week in the evenings. We know you have a day job, so that's why we do it in the evenings. If you're near one of our physical campuses, we feed you dinner so you don't have to get a gas station burrito. We do networking and kind of break bread with your brothers and sisters prior to the actual program. Runs about 3 hours per session. It's broken down into 3 phases. First phase is all about you as a human, and that's where we do the deep introspective look, run the Simon Sinek Start with Why program, talk about priorities and preferences, get into storytelling, because you have to be able to tell your story in a memorable way and talk about you, not the team. when you're advocating for yourself, either to get a job, raise money for a business, whatever it is, get in school. The second phase are the tactical tools that most of us think are the most important things. That's, building a resume, designing a LinkedIn profile, doing compensation negotiation, how to do corporate research, mock interviews, things like that. And the third phase, I like to just call it exposure, right? What is the art of the possible for you? And so we do a bunch of panels on entrepreneurship. We do a business 101 thing. We do some other panels where we'll bring in different business lines of various organizations. Along the way, we challenge you to network, get 50 cups of coffee, so you get out of your own way. We pair you with an executive coach along the way. And then the final thing I'd say is, our mission is to serve others with honor for life. So their next mission is clear and they continue to impact the world. So we have a people team, and they're think HR professionals, recruiters, career services folks who do that work for you and with you, so you can we can help you find an opportunity, and we'll serve you for life. So if you transition 2 or 3 more times down the road, that's great. Come back to class, come back, ask for help, and we're gonna help you. It is 3 months long, which is a huge time investment. We intentionally made it 3 months long so that you retain most of it. You can digest and marinate. We could probably shove it all down the fire hose at you in a week, but we don't do that. We want you to have that time and space to think for yourself. And then we allow spouses to come to pretty much every class as well. So, transition certainly is a team sport, and should have some great conversations with your spouse and family priorities if you have a family. And then that's it. We're not a jobs placement program, but as you said, you're going to be the one doing the work. We'll be your accountability partners. Okay. But yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And to speak, to speak on this perspective of somebody who's gone through the cohort, in the past couple of years, it is a time commitment, but it's an intentional. That means it makes you take your transition very serious and intentionally. And when I'm having conversations with my wife on the evening, she says, "How long is this thing lasting? You're gone at work all day, and then you're on Zoom for 3 hours every night." But I will say, as the cohort, as we went through the 3 months, she noticed the change. My wife did. She's like, "This is doing what you're saying to me in our own communication." So I'll say the Honor Foundation, transition program, the second and third order benefits of this program, when it came to like my own mental health and being able to open up and say the word I and talk to my mental health professionals, those were things that I didn't expect when I went to THF. And it happens because of the system and the process that's in place. It's not a transition program in my eyes. It's a whole person, program that's going to make you. It made me a better husband, father, made me a better leader for the last couple of years that I was in the service. It was an amazing time. And I loved every minute of it. So there's going to be plenty. You try to service as many soft personnel as you can. Obviously, there's going to be people that can't do it for whatever reason. But what would you say to those, or what do you see as the most common challenge for transition and service members?
Well, there's a couple, but number one is really finding that purpose outside the military. So what's going to make you fulfilled afterwards? And that's a hard thing to find. Like, when you get back to the very human, basic level of why you are here on the planet, most of us don't think about that stuff a lot, but it's important to think about. It may not come from your job. It may come from volunteer activities, but, you should understand that as a human, what your why is. And then you ought to be able to talk about yourself, advocate for yourself versus just the team. And I get, it's important. So I'm not saying I'll make fun of my own community, not in a write a book or be on TV kind of way, but, in a respectful manner. You need to be able to advocate for yourself. And all of that helps you figure out, what it is you want to do. Right. Yeah. So, figure out your why first, be able to talk about it articulately, and then that would kind of drive your what. Yeah. In the actual job.
Yeah. I think that was one of the most eye-opening things for me for THF was with the executive coach that you gave me is I didn't think a lot of my military stories, right? But I would tell her a story about a training exercise and something we did, and she'd be like, "That's amazing. like that you did that, or that you stepped up and did that. That's something that you want to tell in an interview. And I said, well, really? I didn't see that. And she's like, yeah, that absolutely. And she helped me, understand myself at a level outside of the cohort, because we had, one-on-one conversations. So I can just continue to beat the THF drum. And I know it's probably the most uncomfortable part about your job is going out there and having to raise money and ask people to support. But with that, it's a nonprofit. Then nonprofit's probably a bad way to name most nonprofits, because they got to have that green to keep going. But how can people support THF, and what can people do for you to help service members continue to transition with success?
Yeah, it comes down to time, talent, or treasure, which is a fairly common thing in the nonprofit world. So certainly the treasure piece is you can donate money if you're a business owner. If you know somebody that this might resonate with, we're always looking for people who are aligned with our values who would support financially, because we do this free of charge to the service members. The second thing is time. If you'd like to get involved as a coach, a mentor, even faculty, right? As we expand and serve more people, I'm committed to keeping the quality of the program super high. And so we'd love more people to get involved in that manner. Coaching is, walking the journey with somebody through the entire process. Mentoring is more of being willing to take a phone call, talk about what you do, connect to your network, mostly post program. And then on the talent side, it's give the folks from the community a shot. Hire the talent coming out of the SOF community. There is a difference, I think, in the between your average Joe and a member of the SOF community. People who've volunteered to serve, then volunteered again, made it through selection, assessment, training programs, then served honorably on and off the battlefield. They can bring great value to most any organizations. This is not the broken flipper club where, everybody has, PTSD, et cetera, and they're wounded humans. There may be some, but generally people are dealing with that, and they're going to crush it.
Yeah.
So let's say time, talent, or treasure. You can reach us at honor.org for any of that stuff. Get involved, or reach out to me directly.
Yeah. And then for those listening or watching, you can check down below in the comments, and I'll tag and put all the website information in there and stuff for THF. So as we kind of bring in the boat to port, I guess, to use a Navy term, a question I ask everybody is, if you could go back and give 21-year-old Matt Stevens some advice, what would it be?
I would say I would advise myself to seek out mentors a little bit more aggressively, meaningful mentors, not just like somebody in the chain of command, but people that you would have deep respect for, and be bold and go ask them. I was reticent to ask for help in that manner as a younger person a lot. And, it's probably from the vulnerability. I wasn't as secure in my manhood, or whatever you want to call it at that point, but just asking for help or advice, and, that the outside perspective. And I did do that later in my career, but that's the one thing I would say is like, hey, pretty much everybody on the planet is going to say yes if they're themselves a good human. And
yeah. Usually that kind of ends the show there, but I'm gonna pound on that and boot stomp that. Is mentorship is so important. It's harder to find, I think, on the NCO side at first, because we have counseling sessions stuff, but we don't have a lot of meaningful mentorship, right? Where we're really talking about the things that make life go around. So seek out mentors early and often. Something I definitely wish I would have done earlier in my career, because it again, like THF, good mentors kind of changed my life. So I couldn't agree with you there more, Matt. Thanks for all you do. Thanks for all you've done, and thanks for all you continue to do for our nation and the SOF community. And thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you. Well, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah. And for all those out there listening, watching, make sure you like, share, subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next episode.